What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. Follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me, as always, is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? Man, we haven't even gotten to the Hall of Fame game, and there's already crazy amount of news happening in the NFL. And the thing that we're going to be talking about today, how unlucky are the Colts right now?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk a lot of Indianapolis Colts today because there's a lot of stuff happening and kind of running around and stuff. Let's just dive into it. Let's just get right into it. It's the Carson Wentz injury. So apparently he's had some sort of foot issue for a while now. It's kind of, and as Brian, as our breaking news guy, I'm going to let you jump in anywhere I miss a note or I miss an important nugget. It sounds like he's had this for a while. And they've kind of just done I'll play through it and see how it goes. And, everything should be fine. Now the hope of him just playing through it is completely out the window, and it sounds like he's going to need surgery. The minimum timetable is 5 weeks, which would basically he would, in theory, be ready for week 1. The maximum is 12 weeks. I guess just from your perspective, where's your head at with the Carson Wentz specific piece and kind of like his injury and when we could potentially see him back on the field?
Well, I know for a fact he was having the surgery this afternoon, and apparently it was something about some fragment of bone that had broken off that had just been floating around in there for a while that
Sure.
he got flared up at practice. So it's not even like he had been playing through excruciating pain. It just recently got this bad. And the best case scenario, the 5-week timeline, I really don't see that happening, especially when you're talking about somebody's foot, when you're trying to evade rushers and stuff like that for a guy who's already had a lower body injury with an ACL. So I do think that this will creep into the regular season. And at that point, what are the chances that this guy who's been so injury prone over his career, he seemed to be kind of soft last year in Philadelphia. I mean, what have the Colts gotten themselves into? I just don't really know what they're going to do here because they're down to Jacob Easton at quarterback. And who knows if Carson Wentz plays even the first half of the year.
Yeah, so we'll talk about some of those options behind them. We'll talk about some of the quote-unquote Twitter trade rumors. We'll talk about some of the options that are how is this going to affect the offense. But I don't know. Like, I wanted to be excited about Carson Wentz and the reunion with Frank Reich and what we saw from the first 2 years in Philadelphia. But this is a guy who's been dealing with injuries, and honestly, for the last probably 3 years, hasn't even really been that good. Like he played a full season in 2019, but 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns. Those are solid numbers, and numbers that, if I'm thinking about pass catchers and about the running backs there, I'm going to be really excited about. But I don't know about you, but like, were you ever considering, like, we obviously did our late round quarterback talk? Like, was Wentz on your radar? Was he a guy you were going to draft? In deeper leagues, in 2 quarterback leagues, I've been doing a ton of best ball. He wasn't somebody who's popping up for me. But what about for you?
He would be one of the lower options in that realm of guys. Just knowing with what in Indianapolis, they want to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. They didn't jump into at the back end of the first round to draft that guy to allow this team to be run through the quarterback. I mean, that's why they brought in Phillip Rivers last year. They kind of took the reins away from him and they gave it to the backfield. With Marlon Mack back, I think Indianapolis is going to be ran through literally the running game. So Carson Wentz, he maybe had QB2 upside. I just didn't see the potential of him busting out and giving you tremendous value for where he was being drafted. So, I mean, It's really not that big of a loss in terms of fantasy, but the pieces around him, I do think we'll see a pretty substantial hit.
Yeah, so let's nip this in the bud. Nick Foles. I understand the relationship with Frank Reich, but like the narrative surrounding Nick Foles today is hilarious to me. Like, when did this guy,
right?
like, when did he become like freaking Dan Marino out there and like, no, this is the savior? Like, yes, he had a good, like, what, 3 days with Jacksonville until he got smashed in the first quarter. We've seen times, but he's also been pretty terrible. Chris Mortensen did tweet, the Colts are not trading for Nick Foles, Gardner Minshew, or Marcus Mariota at this time. Now, we could be looking at a situation as camp kind of comes to an end and his surgery looks like it might not have gone. Like, obviously it's going to go fine, but like, it might be the recovery might be going a little bit slower than anticipated. Maybe they get in the market for somebody weird, or maybe they, Jacoby Brissett becomes more interesting. Maybe the Niners are much happier with Trey Lance, and Jimmy Garoppolo could make sense. But like, I don't understand the Nick Foles love, and I think at this point, like, I would be pretty stunned to see them trade for anybody of that kind of level.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that would be intriguing about Nick Foles going to Indianapolis is not even the fact that he'd be reuniting with Frank Reich, but it's more so that Indy has an amazing offensive line. They have an amazing defense, and they really just need a game manager there who is not going to lose them games. I mean, this team is set up to win despite the quarterback.
Yeah.
So I really think that if they can get Easton over there to, play good game management ball, I don't think they're going to make a move. I don't see them in need of a quarterback with the way that this team is built.
Yeah, Jacob Easton is a guy that coming out of the draft process, I was pessimistic about at best, I guess you could say. Definitely has a lot of skills, but definitely makes a lot of boneheaded decisions. I think best case scenario, he becomes Josh Allen. And that's, I think, obviously the 1% or point 0.001%. But I'm saying that's like, in terms of skills, in terms of upside, that's where he's at. The more likely scenario is he's Drew Lock and just kind of flounders in mediocrity. But this team is built. They have a really good defense. They have a good offensive line. They can run the hell out of the ball. So it'll take a lot of pressure off the young guy. And I think, we've seen questionable quarterbacks kind of step into offenses and kind of come together. Obviously, Frank Reich has a lot of success, putting different pieces in place and kind of maximizing what the quarterback can do. So I'm optimistic we can see Jacob Easton. Once again, I'm not drafting him in most leagues. If you have him in like a super flex league and you can sell really high, go nuts. But I am interested to see what it means for the pass catchers, especially. And let's jump into that, because I think that's where the biggest discussion. Brian, I've told you about my underdog glove. I did 2 fast drafts, and I'm in the process of finishing 2 more on underdog today. Pittman was definitely a guy I was interested. Didn't love Ty. Paris Campbell is somebody that I kind of flirting with, and if you want to check out our wide receiver late round finds, you can head over to our YouTube page or listen on the Spotify, iTunes, wherever. That should be up soon if it's not up already. But I guess, does the quote unquote downgrade from Wentz to whoever's under center week 1, or maybe it is a banged up Carson Wentz. I guess where's your head at when you're thinking about drafting Pittman or Hilton or Jack Doyle, any of the pass catchers?
Well, I guess it's non-existent now, especially. This is not a receiving core that I was extremely excited on coming into this season. Just kind of seeing it was kind of melancholy last year with the gunslinger Phillip Rivers. Carson Wentz hasn't really seemed as like the guy that wanted to force things down the field, besides last year in Philly, as he felt the pressure from Jalen Hurts. So I don't feel like this offense is built to be able to support so many assets on the outside. And when you're looking at a guy like Michael Pittman, I feel like he's the ascending talent, but they weren't going to phase out T.Y. Hilton at all. And then you got Paris Campbell coming back. You have the group of tight ends. You have Nyheim Hines out of the backfield. I just don't think there's enough volume to support all of these dudes. And now we don't know how many games we're gonna be missing Carson Wentz. I think they go even more. They lean heavier on the running game, and then there's maybe 20 passes a game. So, I mean, right now I'm not really touching any of the receivers from the Colts.
Yeah, so he's currently going after Juju, Debo Samuel, Robbie Anderson, Antonio Brown, before Laviska Shenault, Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams, Will Fuller. Before, for me, he was somebody that I was grabbing. My head says don't overestimate this injury to Wentz and believe in Pittman as a talent and draft him as if you were, because the difference I don't think is as massive. Now, when I can say one thing, and when I've come to actually drafting, Pittman's been there, and I've kind of gone to the other pieces just because I like Laviska Shenault, I like Robbie Anderson, I like Debo, I like Brandon Cook and Mike Williams and Will Fuller. And when you're drafting a receiver in this range, and you're saying, okay, what are the upsides, what are the downsides, what differences can I make? The quarterback position is something that comes to the front of my mind. And as much as I say I don't like Carson Wentz very much, and it's really not that big of a downgrade, I'm also thinking, okay, Carson Wentz is a brand name, and maybe even if in terms of talent, Frank Reich doesn't really, there's not a big difference there. If Frank Reich's like, well, I trust Carson a lot more, maybe I give him a few more shots, maybe a few more things. Maybe the defense knows that, Carson Wentz is back there, and they're a little more, respectful, I guess, and understand that maybe he can make that throw, at least until Easton beats them. They won't adjust there. So maybe there is a little bit there. But it is definitely an interesting range. And if he falls kind of beyond there into the Curtis Samuel, Mecole Hardman, Marquise Brown, Henry Ruggs area, I might be diving back in at that point. But where he's currently going, it's going to be really hard for me to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I think that's the best point right there, is the fact that when you're looking at pure ADP data, I mean, if he's going around a guy like Antonio Brown, Robbie Anderson, Debo, and even a Laviska, who we've only heard raving reviews about him in camp thus far, they all have more stable situations at quarterback. They're really playing for teams that are not going to be winning games, so they're going to have to be throwing a ton, or they're just kind of, they have a design, like a definitive role within their offense, and they know what they're getting. Like a guy like Antonio Brown, maybe third on the hierarchy in terms of targets, but he's got Tom Brady throwing him the ball. Yeah. So yeah, I'd much rather take the chance on those guys right now than risk having Michael Pittman have some bum throwing the ball 10 times a game,
Yeah, I do think Jacob Easton, he has a cannon, and I think Pittman and Paris Campbell could be incredibly interesting if they give him a 16 full games and let him kind of get acclimated. I can envision us talking week 9, week 10 about Paris Campbell being a playoff target because Jacob Easton's come to fruition, and he might be throwing 24 passes instead of say 28 or 29, but they might be 14 deep balls or 16 deep balls, more field stretching throws, and actually become more interesting as the season rolls along, especially in a division with my Titans, who suck against the pass, Jacksonville, who is awful against the pass, and Houston, who is awful against the pass. I could see this offense being interesting, and in best balls, if you want to get a little aggressive, I think now is the time to take the pass catchers of the Colts. But
let me just say too, I do think that there will be value in trying to trade for or the potential of signing Michael Pittman off the waiver wire after the first few weeks, especially if Wentz doesn't play. Because when looking at the Colts' schedule to open the season, Seattle, the Rams, the Titans, at Tennessee, at Miami, at Baltimore is the first 5 weeks. This team could be 0-5, and they could be getting destroyed by teams without a quarterback, which means that fantasy players everywhere might be like, oh, screw this, I want nothing to do with this guy. Then you can take him in for no risk.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good call. He could easily be a waiver wire guy or like a buy low
Yep.
guy as the offense, because I do think Easton can be, but yeah, he's basically a rookie quarterback trying to find his footing, and there was already enough questions about him coming in. That's why he fell to the Colts. But I feel like I love the talent, and in Dynasty this might be a great opportunity as well, to buy low on Pittman, to buy low on Paris Campbell if your league mates are going to be a little aggressive, or if they're maybe in a win now mode and they can't afford to be patient.
Yep.
Let's talk about the running backs, because I think from a running back perspective, especially when you're talking about Jonathan Taylor, I don't think this impacts it at all. And if anything, I think Jonathan Taylor gets a little bit of a boost. Granted, the defense might focus a little more on the running game, but Jonathan Taylor was brought in to absolutely feast. And Taylor's a guy that I've come around on quite a bit as we kind of march towards the season. I mean, we got football on Sunday, and we don't not have football on Sunday after, starting this weekend until after February. So like,
It's a
it's
beautiful
go
thing.
time. Like, we have no time to wait. And Jonathan Taylor is now my RB5, and I'm very happy to keep him there. I have him above Zeke. I have him above Saquon, Antonio Gibson, Aaron Jones. So yeah, I'm all aboard the Jonathan Taylor hype train. I'm fully ready for it to derail, because I got a little too aggressive. But love this guy, love the talent. And it's so funny, Brian. This is a guy that was struggling, and we're like, man, what did we see at Wisconsin? Why did he get drafted so high? Why didn't this work? And they kind of let him loose over the second half and into the especially the last third of the season. And that there's the reminder we needed. There's the hey, this guy is actually really, really good. And we should have been valuing him as such. So, are you simpatico on the Jonathan Taylor with me?
Well, I'll definitely say that coming into last year during the draft, to me, Jonathan Taylor was the most well-rounded guy in terms of like suiting a more pro style system with the way that teams want to run the ball, keep the ball on the ground. And I think he was the best guy for a potential 3 down, every down role. Okay.
Sure.
Now coming into this season, I'm a little less optimistic than you are, especially with the Carson Wentz news. I mean, even kind of without the Carson Wentz news, I thought that this team would go a little more heavy on the shotgun formations with Wentz, knowing that Carson didn't really line up under center as that often in Philadelphia, and they didn't really have a running game there either. So Wentz is probably more comfortable out of shotgun. I don't think Taylor is the kind of running back that does best out of those I'm standing still runs. He's kind of that Adrian Peterson style where you get him the ball in the backfield with momentum and dudes are going to be jumping out of the way.
Yeah.
I think he's near the back end of the RB1s for me, just because I don't know what we're going to see from him in the passing game. Yes, I know we saw it a lot more last year, but Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack is coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they're going to work Mack in.
Let me throw a few names at you and see where your head's at. Would you rather have Nick Chubb or Jonathan Taylor? And we'll do half PPR just to kind of passing work a little bit, but not necessarily the most important.
Give me the best pure runner in the NFL, Nick Chubb.
Wow, that's a discussion for another day. We'll leave that there. Aaron Jones or Jonathan Taylor?
Man, I just keep banking on the touchdown regression from Aaron Jones, but
yeah,
assuming Aaron Rodgers is there, I'm taking Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Aaron Rodgers is there. I would be blown away if he's not there, barring a major injury. Joe Mixon or Jonathan Taylor?
At this point, I love Joe Mixon, but there's so many pieces. I think I'm kind of flip-flopping on Mixon's potential this season. I'd probably rather have Taylor.
It's really funny you mentioned that, because I'm also flip-flopping, but I was much more in the pessimism camp. Now I'm a lot more optimistic. I think this Bengals offense could be really fun. I think their defense could be really garbage.
So it's going to be like the Buccaneers a couple years ago with Jameis Winston, where they can put up a ton of points.
Burrow has an amazing season. Maybe you don't, I don't know that I'm going to I don't think Jamar Chase and or Tyler Boyd or T Higgins are going to, I think they're all like 1,000 to 1,200 yards. Like they could have 3,000 yard guys. I don't know if you're necessarily going to get a 1,500 yard guy. But I think Mixon could be in for a huge season. Obviously, his workload will come down a little bit, but I think his productivity and his effectiveness could go up and kind of negate any of that.
Especially there's nobody there anymore to
Right.
to take any
Yeah,
touches
no,
from him.
it's been a wild ride, and I completely understand the pessimism because I was there with you, but I've flipped on him, and he's moved up my rankings as well as the names like Miles Sanders and J.K. Dobbins and all of my favorite players in terrible situations just continue to plummet down my rankings. Okay, Brian, I think that covers us for the Colts. I'm a little more optimistic on this team kind of in general, it seems, especially when it comes to Jonathan Taylor. And but we'll see how the next few weeks play out. If I think being aware of what the Colts do will give us a good inkling of what their expectations are. Do they bring in a Nick Foles, a Marcus Mariota, a Jimmy Garoppolo, whoever that, okay, that would tell me, we're not going to see Foles or we're not going to see Carson Wentz. Now, if they just roll with what they got, that means they're either fine with Jacob Easton being the guy, and maybe they'll bring in a Jacoby Brissett or that kind of guy. And we can feel comfortable, or they feel like Wentz is going to be fine. And so being aware of all that, I think, is really important. So Colts-centric pod in the books. As I mentioned, Brian and I will be talking our wide receiver, later round finds. We'll also have some great content up on the website or up on YouTube already, as well as Spotify or iTunes. We had a great conversation with Matt Harmon. Go check that out if you haven't done that already, talking some of these second-year wide receivers, some of the guys he's excited about, as well as Michael Thomas. So for Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.